My name's Tenna Davies. I'm a clinical psychologist and advanced certified schema therapist, and I'm here to talk about 4 ways to lift your imagery rescripting.
Hi, my name is Dr. Jo White. I'm a clinical psychologist and advanced schema therapist too, and I'm here to hear Tenna's top tips.
Thank you.
So do you want to get going, Tenna?
Thank you. Yes. So the first is to ask how old the client is when you float back in the image. So you're wanting to know the age of little them so that you can reparent them. And this really helps you to accommodate for their developmental stage. So if they're 5, you're going to be saying perhaps some different words, but also your tone's going to be really different. So if a 5-year-old tells me that, they don't have any friends, I might sort of, metaphorically get on my knees to get to eye level, speak to them in a really soothing tone. I might be like, oh, love, you don't have anyone to play with. If a 15-year-old says that, I might say, oh no, what's happened with your friends? It's a slightly sort of different tone and vibe. So that's tip 1.
I love this tip, Tenna. I think it's so important, isn't it, to really visualize yourself, how old the child is, so that you can adapt your language in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're really trying to attune to them, and it helps me picture who I'm, reparenting to. The second tip is really around safe place or calm place. Now, safe place and calm place can be a really beautiful intervention. However, sometimes clients can get a bit stuck because if they were raised in an environment where they weren't feeling, very safe, where there was a lot of abuse, they often can't remember anywhere that they can go that was safe at all. So in these cases, what I talk about is going back to the future. So that might be asking their healthy adult to bring them back to their present home. It could be in taking them to a cherished place, to a garden, to another country. It could be me taking them somewhere, even going to my office, just anywhere in the future where it's a lot safer. And you can do some really beautiful work too around getting an attachment person from present day to come to get them. It might be their best friend or their partner or just someone they really love and trust. You can just do some gorgeous work with this. And if they have absolutely no one, even a public figure is really fantastic. Could even be Michelle Obama comes in and takes them to the White House or something.
I really love this idea, just thinking about how some people just help people to feel safe instantly, don't they, in the present day. And so you can really tap into that and make the most of that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And then finally, and this one's not as fun, but it's a really important one, is to leave time in the session to reflect on the imagery. So it's really about overting what you observed in the imagery and making links between their past experiences and their current problem. So an example of this might be, X, it makes sense to me that trust is hard because, as we just saw with your caregivers, they betrayed you from an early age. And so you're kind of making sense of things. You're making sense and rhyme and reason why their current problems are there and their links to the past. And then there's also, some beautiful reflective comments you can make around the formulation. So things like, one thing I learned about you in this image is how important it was to be perfect growing up in order to not be harmed. And I'm wondering now if escaping harm is what actually motivates you to be perfect. So comments like that.
Yeah, those are so important, aren't they? What do you do, Tenna, if you run out of time for reflecting at the end, or you have a little bit of time but not enough actually to cover everything that you wanted to?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I guess if you don't have a lot of time, maybe just even making one comment and saying, for example, the comment I just made there and saying, I'm going to give you a little homework assignment, which is just to think about this sentence, about how you need to be perfect in order to not be harmed. Have a think about that, see how that sits with you during the week. And we'll pick that up next time. A favorite therapist line, huh? Pick it up next time.
Thank you. What's your final tip?
Yeah. So here's my absolute favorite tip to really attune to the child or to the client is really knowing which type of child mode the client is in during imagery. Now, of course, there's the vulnerable child mode, but there's actually some lesser known child modes. For example, the defective child mode, which is associated with the defectiveness and shame schema, the worried child mode associated with the negativity pessimism schema. And these are important because it will inform your reparenting. If you know the type of child mode that they're in, this will really help guide what you say to them. So for example, for an abandoned child, you might say something like, I'm not going anywhere. For a defective child mode, it might be, you're enough. You're worthy just for being you. And it's also why knowing your schemas back to front is really useful, because then you can recognize the primary schema in the image that's activating the child mode.
Yeah, that's really important. And do you have any key questions, Tana, that you might ask to help you to identify what the child mode is?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So yes, you can always just ask, as you may anyway, asking how they feel in the image, like, what are you feeling right now? What's happening for you? And trying to clarify. So if they say, oh, I feel really left behind, you might sort of go, well, do you feel abandoned, or do you feel lonely? Or, trying to clarify it a little bit without going into any sort of analysis. You're really just trying to really attune to them. And that's going to give you a bit of a clue as to what that child mode is. And in general, like what the themes are, so that you can think about, well, what's the schema being activated here? Will let you know what the child mode is. And I also love your idea, Joe, that you were telling me about before, is that what they say they need can also be a really good clue.
Yeah, thanks for those ideas. So can you tell us a bit more about your formulation and treatment guides and how they might help with imagery rescripting?
Yeah, so for those interested, I've written these guides, one for every schema. It took me a million years to do, but I finally finished them. And they really provide guidance on a whole range of things, but particularly on coping with the different child modes. There's examples of reparenting for every schema. There's imagery ideas for every schema. And then there's also common modes associated with every schema. So if I can pull it up, and I don't know if screen share works on Facebook Live, but we shall soon find out. This is the defectiveness and shame guide. So it goes into, how do clients typically present, their upbringing. But in this section here on treatment, you've got, imagery, if there's a particular child mode, and then, some imagery ideas as well. Yeah, so that's basically it.
I think those guides are so brilliant. They're going to be so useful for people, particularly when you're just feeling really stuck. Some ideas to prompt what's helpful next. Yeah. How might they help people who are really focusing on mode work rather than working on an individual schema?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good question, because so many of us do mode work, and it's really important that, the mode work. So the thing is, you can weaken modes by treating the schemas that underpin and perpetuate them. So when you identify a mode, it's important to think about what schema underpins it or drives it, because that's going to help treat the mode. So an example would be the compliant surrenderer mode. So your treatment plan is going to be really different if it's underpinned by abandonment versus, for example, mistrust abuse. And your reparenting is going to be different, in imagery. It's just, you just need to know what the schemas are that drive those modes, I find that helps anyway.
Yeah, I think it kind of really supercharges your intervention, doesn't it? If you're really tuned in to the schema that's underlying the mode, and you can really focus your intervention then.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Thank you so much, Tana, for sharing all of your tips and ideas. I'm going to put a link into your formulation guides in the chat below the live screening, so that if anybody's interested in picking up those guides, they can go straight to Tana's website.
Thank you so much, Joe. We'll catch everyone next time. Bye.